now that the Z is back in the shop, I wanted to do a final review of the car from the front all the way to the back and go over all the specific build details about this car. I get tons of questions every day asking what's my turbo setup, what intercooler am I using, what radiators am I using. The car is in its perfect state right now, and this is where I wanted to build it 4 months ago. That was around the time of when I decided to ditch the VQ and go 2J, and then decided to do a single turbo conversion, and then which led to a crazy just rebuild the whole entire car. So it's been about 4.5 months, 5 months, far too long. So I wanted to do one final video going over everything about the car. First, I want to start with the exterior of the car. Up in the front, we're running a Rocket Bunny kit. It is authentic. It's not a rep kit. Should it be a rep kit? Probably, but it's not. So we're running a Rocket Bunny front bumper and a Rocket Bunny front fenders, and the side skirts are some random skirts from some random website. I don't even know what they are. They're just random side skirts that are Hot Boy. And the rear bumper is the same. I have no idea what it is, but it's a rear bumper that's kind of Hot Boy. As all the memes go, I'm running a carbon fiber hood on the car. I don't know what carbon fiber hood it is, but it is from Sabon. Oddly enough, this carbon fiber hood is actually a little bit heavier than my stock hood when I cut out all the under metal underneath the hood. So it's kind of just for looks and mainly just kind of vent some of the heat from underneath the hood. That's pretty much about it. Let's go to the back, Cal. We have rear over fenders from Crown Carbon Crafting. These guys are awesome. The reason why I'm not running a Rocket Bunny rear is because when I originally put this Rocket Bunny, we had to cut a huge portion of this panel to get this panel to cover it completely. The way Rocket Bunny works is the over fenders start about right here, and I simply just don't have the metal to attach a rear Rocket Bunny. I just wasn't able to do it because I already cut too much away. So I ended up just sticking with this rear end, which I actually kind of like. I like having not a Rocket Bunny car. It's kind of like my own mix-up of pieces, which I always thought was pretty cool. Shout out to my boys at Big Country Labs that hooked me up with this 1850 wing. This is their FD legal size. So this isn't their highest wing, it's not their lowest wing, it's actually right in the middle. It's actually pretty cool. They gave me my own custom end planes. As you can see here, it has that anodized Hunko logo and the Big Country Labs kind of collab wing. I really like this wing because it sits super nice and high and super wide, and actually fits perfect in the sense that it's just as wide as the rear hips of the car, and the top of the wing is actually just as tall as the roof line of this car. So if you ever see it in person and you sit right in front of the car and you look all the way down, you'll see the wing be just as wide and just as tall, and in my eyes, that is perfect.
Bruh, when I first saw it, I was like literally taller than TJ, and I'm like, this will look absolutely horrible on your car. But once you guys had it on, get a shot of that. Oh my, that's just good predictions, Siege.
So we started with the exterior, so I only think it's fair to move to the interior next. So on the interior of the car, it's completely gutted. We took out all the carpets, all the headliners, all the sound deadening. It's literally empty. And inside we have a 6-point cage by my friend Kyle KL Fab. Shout out to you. He did this cool XXX design that I don't really see too much. Having a cage is awesome. Besides the fact that it is for safety, a cage actually provides a lot of extra rigidity and stiffness to the chassis and really makes your car handle completely different. If you've never driven a caged car, I highly suggest you do it because you'll definitely see the difference that I'm talking about. One of my favorite things about this interior is the fact that we retrofitted a 370Z dash into this car rather than a 350Z dash. One-piece composite, and we cut out the middle cubby that is notorious for the 350 and 370Z, and we put a stainless steel plate with a switch panel on it. This switch panel can actually be moved. It's just stuck on with some Velcro tape. So
whoa, is that like wireless and shit?
No, there's a wire, but it's actually tucked through the back. We can actually move this and pick it and move it from wherever we want, but right now it's placed right in the middle. Now to the side of that, I have a boost controller, so I can choose if I want 400 horsepower, 500, or 600. Depending on the track size or depending how ballsy I want to be that day, I can turn it up by 200 horsepower. Every drift car's got to have your hydro. This is from Rad Industries. Shout out to my boy Rad Dan. He did a lot of work on this car, but we'll get to that later. We have a CDO9 transmission on the back of this 2J with a Collins adapter plate. I find it works pretty well. The reason why I like the CDO9 transmission so much is because they're cheap relatively to transmissions, and they can actually hold a good amount of power. We ended up ditching the tack that came with this car and switched to a CD7 display from AEM. This display is awesome because it allows me to see every gauge that you'd want in a car. Originally, I had a bunch of gauges in my 350Z dash, but then when I switched to this 370Z, I got the CD7. I can have my boost gauge, my air fuel ratios, my coolant temps, my oil pressure, literally every gauge on one screen, and I can flip through different options and customize what I see, and I can customize shift light, all the jazz, all the buttons, all the bells and whistles you can do on this, and it literally makes everything so much more cleaner and way nicer. All right, underneath the hood, we have the 2JZ motor. Currently, the engine bay is red, the car is white. I do want to paint this car, but I probably will wait till after the first season. I just got the car back and I didn't want her to send it off to paint and like lose it again for a couple more weeks. Excuse all the ugliness. I originally had the twin turbo setup on this car and I ditched it for a single turbo setup. The turbo we're using is a Garrett GTX 3582R. This is their Gen 2 turbo, which spools super quick and pushes crazy power. At my max power, we're at 20 pounds of boost, pushing around 600 horsepower and low 500 foot-pounds of torque. Underneath the turbo, we have a CX Racing manifold. We did some light modification to this manifold, like machine the face, and we also redirected the oil return line around the manifold. When we were on the dyno, we had some issues with overheating and that line got extremely hot. So we had to do some modification to move the lines around and to kind of push everything away from the manifold. It was kind of an odd design, so we put our own touch on there just for some safety reasons. Everything is custom under the hood except the CX Racing manifold. All that was done by my good friend Eric, also known as Ilk Fab. He spent about a month and a half here doing all of it, which you guys saw a big portion of that build. Everything about this motor is custom other than the manifold, which I think is pretty damn cool. It allows everything to fit that much better and spec everything to how I personally like it. Besides the motor and the turbo, we have an oil cooler and we have a power steering cooler. Power steering is something in this car that usually gets really hot and shits itself, so I wanted to put a power steering cooler on there just to minimize any issues on the track. Now, the way we mounted the oil cooler and power steering cooler was a bit different, at least to what I have seen. You oftentimes see it stacked in front of the intercooler, but we actually decided to lay it flat down, so that way both coolers get the maximum amount of air and the intercooler gets the same amount of airflow. You'll notice in the front we don't have the radiator in there. We actually did a rear mounted radiator in this car. So this is actually my personal favorite side of the car. Our radiator is mounted in the back. Now that is solely for cooling purposes. When I originally had my twin turbo setup in the front, I had a lot of cooling issues, and the biggest thing was the car just overheating in general. I decided to say screw it and I throw everything in the back to provide maximum cooling effort. And in order to get the air to the radiator, we actually removed the glass of the car and put a piece of Lexan down and cut a hole in it. So that way the air travels over the roof and scoops right into the rear radiator. Now on the back of that, we have some Polar fans that go to about 5,000 CFM, which is crazy numbers. We have one fan running at about 180 degrees and the second one doesn't kick on until about 205, 210. And the moment that second one kicks on, the temperatures spike right back down. So you oftentimes don't use that second fan, but it's a great backup to have. Obviously the rear end of the car is tube. So we have bash bars coming right off of the end here, and all these chromoly pipes are this structure and like a webbing effect for the rear bumper and the tail light. In the event that I hit a wall or a car hits me or anything happens, half of this will collapse and it should stop at the bash bars. So at the track, I can throw off the old bash bar, throw off the old dental pieces, and actually just bolt up new pieces and we're ready to go. Rather than using an in-tank fuel system, we have what is called a fuel safe. Now, fuel safe is essentially just a gas tank. It's good for a lot of reasons. One, it does better with fire and it has a bladder and has less slosh, but also it keeps me isolated from the tank in case of a fire. That's why you see these big metal walls. That is to act as my firewall. In case this caught fire, I'm separated from the fire and I have a chance to escape before burning to death. Now, what's cool is at Rad Dan's shop, they cut a little window so I can actually see out the back just a little bit, just enough to see if there's somebody on my tail or to see what's going on behind me. To help with all of our fuel systems, DW helped me mad with this car and gave me surge tanks, fuel pumps, pre-filters, and filters all for this car. So a huge shout out to DW. They're actually supporting me this year for the upcoming season and are gonna make sure this car has the proper amount of fuel supplies it needs to keep this car running. These cool little tanks are our swirl pot and the overflow. This is also the highest point of the cooling systems when we're burping the system or refilling the system. It makes everything super simple and super easy. Currently on Ambit wheels, they've been supporting me since day one and still help me out with keeping me fresh stocked with wheels because wheels break when you drift. You hit walls, you hit things, you break things. That's kind of the name of the game. Now for suspension of this car, I'm running PBM on literally everything. I am running BC coils, but as far as my angle kit, toe arm, camber arm, literally everything is PBM. I like them a lot because they are local to where I live. They're about 20 minutes up the road. So now that I've pretty much covered the basics and fundamentals of what is currently done on the car, I'm gonna talk about what I want next on the car. As I said earlier, I just got the car back. I am in no rush to hand it off to get some more work done, but some things that I want to do up and coming is I'd like to get a big brake kit on the car. These brakes are great and they are fine. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but for brakes on my Hydro, I am running a dual caliper setup. And something that's been holding me back and going to a big brake kit is the fact that I'll have to redo my second caliper in the rear. I was looking at some Willwoods or some AP Racing or some Stop Techs, but to make a second rear caliper bracket would just sounds like a nightmare, and it was a nightmare then, I'm sure it's gonna be a nightmare now. But I'd like to eventually do a big brake kit on the car. At the current moment, my number one focus is getting more driving time with this car. It's been about 4 or 5 months since I've been in the car and driving it a lot, so that's my main focus right now. I love where it is, I'm happy where it is. This is where I wanted the car to be a long time ago, and it is finally here. I'm absolutely in love, and as you guys have seen, it drives fucking fucking crazy. That's it for this video. I just wanted to do an overall coverage of the car just to document what it is right now, because I'm guessing a year from now it's gonna be a lot different. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow. Peace out and
Sunday.
keep moving forward.
Bye, Sunday.
And I'm feeling